There is a particular lie we tell ourselves when someone we love begins to go quiet on us. We tell ourselves that they are fine, that the distance is ordinary, that they are simply busy, simply thriving, simply living a life large enough that we have become an optional part of it. It is a comfortable lie because it asks nothing of us. I told myself that exact lie about my own daughter for 3 years. And then a cardboard box, addressed to her and delivered to me by mistake, told me what the quiet had really meant, and it was the opposite of everything I had decided. I want you to hold that, because it is the center of what I have to tell you. For 3 years, I believed my daughter had drifted from me because her life had gotten too big to need me. The parcel told me she had drifted from me because her life had fallen apart, and she could not bear for me to see it. My name is Frances Whitaker, Fran to everyone. I am 63 years old, and I have run a small used bookstore in Providence, Rhode Island for most of my adult life, surrounded all day by other people's stories while I quietly misread my own daughter's. I am going to tell you what was in that box, but to understand it, you have to understand Claire and the kind of daughter I believed I had. Claire is my only child. Her father, my husband, died 7 years ago, and since then it has been the two of us. Or it was supposed to be the two of us. I mention his death because I think it quietly raised the stakes of everything that came after. With her father gone, I was the last parent Claire had, the last person on earth who held that particular place, and I have wondered, since, whether that made it even harder for her to risk disappointing me. When a child has 2 parents, perhaps the fear of falling short can be spread a little. When a child has 1, that single parent's imagined disappointment can loom very large indeed. I will never know for certain, but I think being all she had left may have made me, without either of us choosing it, an even more frightening audience to fail in front of. And I want to tell you who Claire was in our family, because the role she played is the whole engine of what went wrong. Claire was the bright one, the capable one. From the time she was small, Claire was the child who succeeded. Good at school, good at everything, the kind of young person whose path simply seemed to rise. As an adult, she built a career in the way I had never managed to, started her own small business, had what looked from the outside like a polished, upward, enviable life. And I was proud of her. I want to be honest about how proud, because the pride matters to this story. I was a small bookstore owner. I had not done anything the world calls impressive, and my daughter had. So I beamed about Claire. I told customers about Claire. Claire was, in the warm and ordinary way of mothers, my great accomplishment, the proof that I had done something right. I want to tell you about one small habit of mine, because it is the kind of thing that seems harmless and is not. Whenever Claire achieved something, I told the bookstore. My little shop has regulars, people I have known for years, and over the counter I would say it. My daughter just landed this. My daughter just opened that. My Claire, can you believe it? It was pride, and it was love, and it never once occurred to me that it was also a kind of teaching. Every time Claire visited the shop and a regular said, "Oh, your mother is always telling us about you," she received another small confirmation of a thing she had been absorbing her whole life, that her rising was a story her mother loved to tell, that her successes were, in a quiet way, currency in our family. I thought I was simply a proud mother. I was. But I was also, without ever meaning to, writing a lesson into my daughter, one cheerful sentence at a time. And then, about 3 years ago, Claire began to recede. And I want to tell you exactly how I explained it to myself, because the explanation was wrong, and the wrongness cost us. It was not dramatic. There was no fight. There was just a slow, steady thinning of my daughter, the calls shorter and rarer, the visits postponed and then quietly not rescheduled, a vagueness whenever I asked how things were. And because Claire was the success, because the bright child needs nothing, I reached for the explanation that matched the daughter I thought I had. She was busy. She was thriving. Her business, her life, had grown so full that there was simply less room in it for an aging mother and a dusty bookstore. It hurt me, quietly, the way it hurts to be outgrown. But I told myself that being outgrown by a flourishing child is a kind of success in itself, that I had raised her to fly, and she was flying, and a good mother does not complain that the bird no longer needs the nest. So I made my peace with the quiet. I stopped pushing. I let my daughter go. There were warnings looking back. There always are. There was the Christmas Claire did not come, with an explanation about work that I now know was not true. There was the way, on our shorter and shorter phone calls, she would steer every question about her own life back toward mine, toward the shop, toward anything but herself. And how I had let her, because it is flattering to be asked about, and because I did not want to see the steering for what it was. There was a phone call, maybe 2 years in, where I thought, just for a moment, that her voice sounded wrong, sounded thin and frightened underneath the brightness, and I remember deciding, deliberately, not to push, telling myself it was a bad connection and a busy day. I had a dozen chances to see it, but seeing it would have meant giving up my comfortable story of the thriving daughter, and so, a dozen times, I chose the story. That is the part I have had to forgive myself for. Not that I did not know, that I was given chances to know, and looked away from each one. And then, a few months ago, the parcel came. It was a medium-sized cardboard box, and the delivery driver left it on my step, and when I picked it up, I saw it was addressed to Claire, to my daughter, at my address. That was not entirely strange. Claire had lived with me for a stretch years ago, and her name still surfaced now and then on old records. The return address was a company I did not recognize, in another town. And I did what, I think, any mother would do with a box addressed to her own child sitting on her own doorstep. I assumed it was something simple, something I could set aside for her or forward along, and I opened it to see what it was. It was not merchandise. It was not a simple thing at all. Inside that box, packed without much care, were the contents of a desk. My daughter's desk. There was a framed photograph, one I knew, of Claire and her father. There was a coffee mug. There were a few small personal awards, the kind a business hangs on a wall. There was a little potted plant, dead now, its soil dry. It was, unmistakably, the assembled personal effects of someone who had cleared out of a workplace, the box a person carries to their car on their last day. I have seen that exact kind of box before, in films, in life. Everyone has. And it has always seemed to me one of the saddest small images there is. A whole working life reduced to what fits in a single carton, balanced on one hip, carried out a door for the last time. I had simply never imagined that the next such box I saw would have my own daughter's name on the side of it, and that I would be the one to open it, 3 years too late to have helped her carry it. And I stood on my own front step, holding the dismantled remains of my daughter's career. And I understood, all at once, that the life I had believed was too big to need me had, at some point in the last 3 years, quietly ended. I carried the box inside, and I took the things out one by one and set them on my kitchen table, and each object was its own small sentence. The framed photograph of Claire and her father, she had kept that on her desk, had looked at her father every working day, and I had not known. The little awards, the modest plaques a small business gives itself, the ones I am sure she had once been proud of. And the plant, the dead one, and that was the object I could not get past. Because a plant on a desk is a thing a person tends. Someone had bought that plant, and watered it, and turned it toward the light, through ordinary, hopeful days at a job that was a life. And then, the days had stopped being hopeful, and at some point the watering had stopped, and the plant had died on the desk before the desk itself was cleared. That dead plant was a small calendar of my daughter's decline, and I had not been there for a single page of it. I sat at my table and wept over a dead plant, because it was the proof that my daughter had had a slow, hard, hopeful, failing year, and had made sure I saw none of it. I sat down at my own kitchen table with that box, and I did not understand the whole of it yet, but I understood that I had been wrong, completely, 3 years wrong, and that my daughter had not been thriving in the silence. She had been drowning in it, and I had been standing on the shore the whole time, telling myself how well she was swimming. I called Claire. I did not accuse, and I did not announce what I had found. I have learned at 63 that the truth comes out best when you do not corner it. I simply told her that a box had been delivered to me by mistake, that it appeared to be hers, and that I thought she should come and get it and have dinner with her mother while she was at it. And there was a long silence on the line. And then my daughter, in a voice I had not heard from her since she was a girl, said, "Mom, I think I need to tell you some things." And she came over the next evening, and across my kitchen table, my daughter finally told me the 3 years. I barely slept the night before she came. I sat up with that box and its objects spread across my table, and I tried to prepare myself, and I found I could not, because I did not yet know what I was preparing for. Part of me, I will admit, was still hoping there was an innocent explanation, that the box was old, that the desk had been cleared for some ordinary reason, that my thriving daughter was thriving still. I think a parent's mind will reach for the comfortable story right up until the last possible second. But mostly, that night, I sat with a quieter and harder feeling, which was the slow understanding of how much I must have missed. If my daughter's whole career had ended and I had not known, then what else? What else had happened in those 3 years, in the life a few miles from mine, that I had explained away as the busyness of a flourishing woman? I did not know yet. But I knew, sitting with that box at 2 in the morning, that the answer was going to be long, and that I was going to have to listen to all of it. Here is what had actually happened to Claire, in the silence I had explained away as success. About 3 years ago, Claire's small business, the business that was the centerpiece of the bright life, the thing I bragged about to customers, had begun to fail. Not through any great fault of hers. It failed the way small businesses fail, through a hard market and bad timing and forces larger than one person. She had fought it for 2 years, quietly, spending her savings to keep it alive, and a year ago it had finally closed. And it had not closed alone. The strain of those years had also ended her relationship. The long partnership I had assumed was solid. In the span of about 3 years, my daughter had lost her business, her income, her home, and her relationship. Nearly every external pillar of the polished life, and had moved, eventually, into a small rented apartment, and had been, this whole time, starting over from nothing, alone, in her 30s. As Claire told me all of this, sitting at my table, what struck me most was not the events themselves. It was how long the list of them was, and how completely I had missed it. 3 years. 3 full years of a human life, my own child's life, had unfolded a few miles from my front door. A slow procession of losses, each one a thing I would have wanted to know on the day it happened, and I had received not one of them. I had spent those same 3 years restocking shelves and ringing up customers, and telling those customers still, out of pure habit, that my daughter was doing wonderfully. I had been bragging about a thriving daughter during the exact months that daughter was packing up a failed business and moving her life into boxes. I have rarely felt anything as cold as the gap between the story I had been telling and the one Claire was finally telling me. And the question that sat in my chest, the question I finally asked her gently across that table, was the one this whole story turns on. Why? Why, through 3 years of losing everything, had my daughter not come to me? When her business was dying, when her relationship was ending, when she was packing the box that ended up on my step, why had she not picked up the phone and let her own mother in? And Claire's answer broke my heart, and it has changed how I think about the whole of our life together. She told me that she could not bear for me to see it, not because she thought I would be cruel, she knew I would not be cruel, but because, she said, she had spent her entire life being my success. She had grown up understanding, in the deep, wordless way children understand things, that her achievements were a source of joy to me, that I beamed when she rose, that Claire, the capable one, was a thing I treasured and told people about. And so, when her life began to collapse, what Claire felt was not only her own loss, it was the terror of disappointing me. She told me she could not stand the thought of my face changing, of watching the pride she had seen there her whole life turn into worry, or sympathy, or, worst of all in her imagination, a quiet sense that her mother's great accomplishment had not panned out after all. She said, "I didn't pull away because I stopped loving you, Mom. I pulled away because I couldn't figure out how to be a failure in front of you." Claire told me something else, and it was the detail that has stayed with me longest. She said that the hardest moments of those 3 years were not the bank meetings, or the day the business closed, or the move into the small apartment. The hardest moments, she said, were the ordinary phone calls with me, because on every one of those calls she had to perform, had to find the bright voice, had to have an upbeat answer ready for "how are things," had to steer me away from any question that might crack the surface. She said that talking to her own mother had become, over 3 years, one of the most exhausting and lonely things in her life, because it was the place she had to work hardest to seem fine. Think about that. The relationship that should have been her shelter had become, because of a lesson I never knew I taught, just one more stage she had to perform on. My daughter was loneliest in those 3 years, in the exact moments she was talking to me. I want to be honest about what those words did to me, because they did not only make me sad, they made me look at myself. Because Claire was not describing a daughter's irrational fear out of nowhere, she was describing something she had learned. Somewhere, and I do not believe I ever did it cruelly, or even consciously, I had taught my daughter that my love and my pride traveled together. I had been so warm, so visibly delighted, so vocal about her successes, that a child had drawn a quiet and reasonable conclusion, that the delight was the love, that the rising was the thing that earned the beaming. I had never once said to Claire, in words, that my love depended on her succeeding. But I had also, I realized, sitting at that table, never made sure she knew that it did not. I had celebrated her victories so loudly that I had never thought to tell her clearly what would happen to my love if the victories stopped. And so she had assumed. And the assumption had cost us 3 years, and had left my daughter to lose everything she had, alone, a few miles from a mother who would have come running. I want to be fair to myself too, because Claire was insistent that I be. I did not create this alone, and I did not create it out of any failure of love. I loved my daughter with my whole life, and the pride I took in her was real and warm and meant only well. The lesson she absorbed was a side effect, not a message, the kind of thing that gets transmitted in a family without anyone choosing to send it. Claire said, gently, that night, that she did not blame me, that she knew I would have caught her in an instant if she had only let me see her fall. And I believe her. But I have also had to sit with the harder, truer thing, which is that good intentions do not control what a child actually learns. I meant only to celebrate her. She received a rule about love. Both of those things are true at once, and the space between them is where we lost 3 years. So I did the thing, that night, that I had failed to do for 30-some years. I said it plainly. I took my daughter's hands across that kitchen table, and I told her the thing I had wrongly assumed she already knew. I told her that I had never been proud of her achievements. I had been proud of her, of Claire, the person, the whole person, and that the achievements had only ever been one happy thing about a daughter I would have loved exactly as much if she had never had a single one of them. I told her that the box on my doorstep, the dead plant and the cleared desk did not lower her 1 inch in my eyes, that there was no version of my daughter, thriving or ruined, rising or starting over from nothing, that I did not want fully in my life. And I told her the sentence I should have made sure she carried since she was small. I told her that she never had to earn her way to her mother, that the door was not a prize, that she could always, always come to me broken and be just as welcome as she had ever been whole. And my daughter, 30-some years old, the capable one, the bright one, put her head down on my kitchen table and cried in a way I had not seen since she was a child. The way you cry when you finally set down something you did not know you had been carrying. When she was able to speak again, Claire said something that I will carry for the rest of my life. She said that the worst part of the 3 years had not been any of the losses. It had been the loneliness of facing them while believing she had nowhere to put them down, of going through the hardest season of her adult life with the door to her own mother seemingly closed, a door she herself had quietly shut, out of a fear she had never tested. And she said that what she grieved, sitting at my table, was not only the lost business or the lost relationship. It was the 3 years of comfort she could have had and did not, the 3 years of being held that she had talked herself out of. We were both grieving the same thing, I realized. Not the failures, but the solitude the failures had been suffered in. A solitude that, it turned out, had never been necessary at all. The door had been open the entire time. She had only needed to believe it. A few months have passed now. Claire and I are not the way we were before the 3 years. We are, I think, better, though it is a better that was bought at a price I wish we had not paid. She is rebuilding her life, and she is doing it now where I can see it, which is the whole difference. She tells me about the hard parts. She lets me help when I can help, and she lets me simply know when I cannot. I have watched my daughter this season, the unsuccessful in front of me, be uncertain, be starting over, be ordinary, and she has watched my face while she did it, and what she has seen there is not the pride curdling into disappointment that she spent 3 years dreading. She has seen that her mother's face does the same thing for a struggling daughter that it ever did for a thriving one. I think she is only now, in her 30s, beginning to truly believe that. There is a small new ritual between us that I treasure more than I can say. Claire calls me now on her bad days. Not only her good ones, her bad ones. She will call and simply say, "Today was hard," and tell me why, and let me listen, and let me say the small, useless, loving things a mother says, and she does not perform a bright voice for me anymore. It sounds like such a minor thing. It is, in fact, the entire repair. For 3 years, my daughter believed she was only allowed to bring me the polished version of herself. Now she brings me the tired version, the discouraged version, the version that is still figuring it out. And every time she does, every ordinary hard day phone call, she is practicing the belief she should have been raised certain of, that she does not have to be impressive to be loved. We are teaching it to her late, the two of us, one honest phone call at a time. But we are teaching it. I kept the framed photograph from the box, Claire and her father, and it sits on the counter of my bookstore now, where I see it all day. But I think of the box itself often. It was never meant for me. It was a clerical error, a wrong address, a parcel that slipped sideways out of its proper path. And it remains the most important piece of mail I have ever received, because a misdelivered box did what 3 years of my daughter's careful silence had specifically been designed to prevent. It let her mother in. I have thought a great deal about how close we came to never having this. The parcel reached me by pure accident, a wrong address, a clerk's small error, a box that slipped out of its proper path. If it had gone where it was supposed to go, Claire would have received it quietly, alone, in her small apartment, and absorbed that last hard object of her old life by herself, and I would never have known. The silence would have simply continued. We might have lost not 3 years, but 10, or 20, or all of them. It frightens me how thin the thread was. Our reunion was not the product of my wisdom as a mother, because I had none to offer here. I had read everything wrong. It was the product of a delivery mistake. And I have decided that the lesson in that is not to be grateful for luck, but to refuse to need it. I will not, ever again, leave the truth of the people I love to chance and clerical error. I will ask. I will lean in. I will go and find out. I want to leave you with the 2 things this taught me. The first is about the silence of the people we think are strong. When the capable one in your family, the bright child, the steady sibling, the friend who never seems to struggle, goes quiet, it is dangerously easy to read that quiet as the contentment of someone who simply does not need you anymore. I did exactly that, but the strong ones do not stop needing you. What often happens instead is that the strong ones, precisely because everyone has always seen them as strong, become the least able to admit when they are not, and so their hardest seasons go the most hidden, and they suffer them the most alone. If someone in your life who has always seemed fine has gone quiet, do not assume the quiet is contentment. Lean in. Ask twice. The capable ones have often been handed the loneliest job in the family, which is to never be seen to fall. The second thing is for those of us who are parents, and it is the hardest lesson I have taken from this. Be very careful how you celebrate. There is nothing wrong with being proud of your child's achievements. Pride is love, and children should feel it. But if your delight is loudest, brightest, most visible only when your child succeeds, a child can quietly conclude that the love and the success are the same thing, and that the love must therefore be continually earned. I never told Claire her worth was conditional, but I also never made sure she knew it was not, and a silence like that, a child will fill in for herself. So, say it. Say it out loud, plainly, more than once, to the people you love, that they do not have to earn their place with you, that they can come to you having failed, having lost, having fallen completely apart, and find the door exactly as open as it has ever been. Do not let them have to guess. Make sure they know. If this story landed for you, drop the word parcel in the comments below. I read them. It tells me which stories are worth telling next. Subscribe for new stories, real patterns, full narratives, the long game. 2 small pieces of wisdom from this one before I go. First, when the strong one goes quiet, do not mistake it for peace. Every family has someone cast as the capable one, the one who never seems to struggle, and that person is often the least able to say when they are drowning because their whole role is to never be seen sinking. So their worst seasons hide the longest and hurt the most. If someone who has always seemed fine has grown distant, do not let their reputation for strength talk you out of worrying. Lean in. Ask the second time. The quiet of the strong is the quiet most worth checking. Second, make sure the people you love know your love is not a wage. It is natural to glow with pride when someone you love succeeds, but be honest about whether your warmth is loudest only in their good seasons. A child, a partner, a friend can quietly come to believe that your love is the reward for their rising and must be re-earned each time. The cure is plain words, said out loud and often, that they do not have to achieve their way to your door, that they can arrive having lost everything and be just as welcome. Do not leave it to be assumed. Tell them they can come to you broken. Make sure they know they can come to you broken. I'll see you next time.